Hey guys, welcome to Voice Bootcamp. My name is Faisal Khan. I'm the collaboration and contact center instructor at voicebootcamp.com. In this video, we're going to focus on the business hours of Amazon Connect. Now, business hours might be a small topic to configure or discuss, but it is one of the most important topic to understand. And the reason behind this is that many organizations have certain operating hours that you need to control when you have call coming in a off, let's say, out of those hour range. Then obviously there may not be an agent handling the call. So configuring your business hours, your holidays, your time zone is very crucial to any contact center. And here we're going to try to understand the type of configurations that we can do to ensure that our business our contact center has regular business hours operating. If our business is 24/7, we have that options. How do we cover midnight if there is a time that or conflict? We'll talk about how you can add some sort of lunch or other break that you might need based on your company's policies, and of course, the effect of daylight saving. So the most important thing first is that you need to do when you set up your queue, for example, is to specify when that queue is available. Is that queue available during normal 9 to 5 or 5 to midnight or midnight to like for example morning 9 a.m. Now you have to keep in mind that every organization or country may have a different definition of business hours. For example, in most cases in North America, we have a business hour from 9 to 5 Monday to Friday. But if you were to go somewhere in Middle East, for example, their business hour could be Sunday to Thursday. And if you are going to, let's say, someplace in India or Philippines, where they may provide a lot of call center support to the West, to the people in the West, so their business hour might be in the nighttime. So you have to understand that and create your business hours according to that. Now, if your contact center is hosted in North America, but your agents are located in let's say in Asia, or your customers may be located in Asia, you also have to make sure that you adjust the business hour according to that. So the first thing you do is set up your queue with specifying what is your normal business hour may look like. After that, we'll talk about how we can customize that. So let's go and take a look at how we can create a business hours in Amazon Connect. So when you're in Amazon Connect, you can access the business hours by going to right here, routing, and you see hours of operation. You can also go from right here, view hours of operation as well. So if I go to hours of operation, and what I have right now is a basic hours, which could be open 24/7. Now I can always add a new business hour. So let's call this office hours in Canada and US. Even Canada and US, you have to keep in mind that we have a different time zone. For example, we may have a time if you're in Toronto, you're in East Coast. If you're in Vancouver or Los Angeles, you're on the West Coast. So you may have to specify that, right? So I'm going to say East Coast office hours. So for East Coast client and businesses, and the time zone, we must specify time. Now, again, US Eastern, which will focus on the Eastern time zone. Now, setting up the hours Monday to Friday, as you can see, by default, it's 9 to 5 p.m. And I will keep it. Now, I at the time of recording, it is probably 6 in the morning. So if I were to call right now, even though I am on Monday, I think today's what Tuesday, I think Wednesday, and therefore it will not work even if it is weekdays because it is beyond 9 a.m. Now you can always add a tag. So let's say uh, we'll say type of day. We can say weekdays. No, hours of operations. Okay, we're going to use that, and we're going to say value weekdays. Okay. Again, you can call whatever you want. That's just simply for searching capability. All right, so I have my first business hour ready to create. And this would be obviously you may need to refresh this page for the show up. So you got the East Coast business office hours. I will create one for West Coast. This would be Pacific. You could use Canada. Pacific is fine. Both Canada and US is the same Pacific time zone, and business hours is usually 9 a.m. Now, some organization may be located physically in let's say East Coast, let's say West Coast, let's say Pacific, but they may start their working hours maybe a little earlier because they want to cover both East and the West as well. So sometimes you'll see people coming in around 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning to continue to serve the people on the East Coast as well. Okay, I will not worry about. So I'm going to change the time here, and I'm going to make it 7. Okay, so 7 to 5. This should usually cover both sides. Now again, this is something that may vary from locations to locations. Okay, so this is your normal, what we call normal business hours. You may want to create a business hour for weekend. Like for example, maybe you have a certain agent who are certain queues that are handled by the people who are working weekend. So we can create a weekend 24/7. And in this case, what we'll do, we'll just say delete Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. Just gonna have Saturday, Sunday from 9 to 5 p.m. Okay, so that would be your weekend. Now, again, you must specify the whether it is Eastern or Western coast. So you got your East Coast, West Coast, and you got your weekend. Sometimes you may just want to provide services for limited hours. Now, if you have a requirement to specify a particular hour that starts at midnight, you can always start with the time 12 a.m. Yeah, to let's say morning 8 a.m. if your hour starts from there as well. Now, one of the sometimes you may have a scenario where you have 24 hours open, right? So what happens if your call center is open 24 hours? So in this case, you may want to add another site, another location, so office hours. And it doesn't really matter East Coast, West Coast at this moment. For now, we're going to say 24/7. And again, I'm going to use the East Coast. Oops, not Brazil. And here is going to be starting from 12 a.m. So I'm going to say 12. Okay. And you can specify end time. And end time will be 12 a.m. That will be 24 hours. So this is how you would set up 24/7 hours if you want. Now, what happens if you want to specify lunch break? Now, if your entire contact center were to close between lunch from 12 to noon, you will have to specify that as well. Now, some cases, what happen is you will have to create your office hours such that where from 9 a.m. to 12, which is your first break, first set of office hours, and then 12 to 1 is your lunch, and from 1 to 5 p.m. will be the second hours. So if you want to specify a call center to be closed between, let's say, 12 to 1, you will specify a certain range of hours. Now, one of the thing about creating a lunch break is that some environment you don't really have this option. Even if you have a lunchtime, maybe some people will be going to lunch and some people will be continue to working. In most contact center breaks are usually staggered. So while some agents going to lunch break, other might not, and other will probably still be available to handle the contact. In a scenario like that, instead of defining an office hours, a lunch hour as a part of, let's say, operational hours, what you rather do, create a status or something we call it reason code. You may want to have a reason code that says lunch or lunch break or coffee break. The idea is that those who want to take a lunch break, they can just simply choose from available, go from available or not ready mode to a lunch break. So that way they will no longer be receiving calls during that time. So during this time, no contact will be routed to them. as long as they are no that they're not available status. Now, when they return from lunch, for example, they can easily go into contact again by by changing their status from lunch to back to available. Now, supervisor can change an agent status using the real-time metric report, which we'll cover later in the course. Now, you do have to understand the effect of daylight saving. Amazon Connect does use the time zone to determine whether you have a daylight saving is in effect for that particular queue, and it will adjust it automatically for all the time zone that observe daylight saving. Now, not all countries follow the daylight saving, so you have to keep that in mind. Most countries in North America will change their time twice a year. It's kind of one of those messy things that we have to get used to it. But they do change time 1 hour ahead and 1 hour behind, depending on when you are in the offset of your daylight saving time. Now, when a contact comes in, contact center looks at the hours and the time zone to determine whether the contact can be routed to a given queue based on whether they are in a Eastern time zone or Eastern Standard Time Zone versus Eastern Daylight Time Zone. Now, Eastern Standard Time Zone often will be EST, which is used during a normal standard time, which is 9 to 5, which is usually 5 hours behind the UTC. Now, UTC is a coordinated universal time, which is basically standard that everybody follow. So I believe is like a GMT 0. So is behind 5 hours behind that. Now, if you're in a daylight time zone, then you'll be 4 hours behind the UTC. So that's the major difference. So let's say if it is London, let's say 12 noon in London, then our time in Toronto will be 5 hours behind. So it'll be like somewhere, I don't know, 8 or 9. Yeah, I believe 7, something like that. But if it was daylight saving in the east, then it will be like 8 o'clock. So this is something. So you just simply minus from London, you minus 5 or minus 4 if you're in a standard versus daylight time zone. Now, if you're on the other side of the world, like past London to, let's say, towards Singapore or to Dubai, then you will be adding rather than behind. So you'll be ahead of it. So, for example, if London it is 12, in maybe in Dubai it'll be like 4 hours past that. Again, I'm not 100% sure about the exact value, but you can always look at the calendars for that. So it'll be plus 5, plus 4, plus 8 if you're in Singapore, for example, or Hong Kong for that matter. So each country for certain countries falls into certain time of the time zone and where you minus or plus the UTC behind that. Now, not for example, Dubai, they do not follow daylight time zone settings, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you are in North America and some part of in Europe, you may have to follow those daylight saving configurations. All right, so that's the overview about the business hours. Now, business hours, once they are created, you will apply them to the queue. So, for example, if I go to the queue, I do have a very basic queue right now here. And in this basic queue, I can specify uh, business hour, which hours these queues are available. Now, you can also configure your script, which is the flow we talked about. And in this script, let's say I will create a new script, and I can check for business hours here as well by putting this little note. And here, I can specify which business hours I might want to check. So if you can say that if the call comes in between East Coast office hours, and if it is 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday, then it will be considered in hours. Otherwise, it will be considered out of hours. Okay. So that's how the business hour functionality works in Amazon Connect. Hopefully, you got a clear picture in terms of how to set them up and how you will use them. I'll show you how to use them throughout this course as we go through this course. Sometimes I use as a set of best practice to keep, all the way to keep creating my flow with certain set of settings that are always going to be consistent throughout my work. All right, so that's it for this video. Until then, I will see you in the next video.